We know that Republicans are going to be taking over the House of Representatives at the start of 2023, and so that means that for Democrats, there's not too many working days remaining on the congressional calendar to get the things that you want to get passed, and it means that these next few weeks, we have to be all hands on deck to get these pieces of legislation through and get them signed into law. Luckily, we'll still have the Senate after the start of 2023, but we're not going to have the House anymore, and really, these opportunities where you have full control of government, the House, Senate, and presidency, don't happen too often, and so you have to make the best of the time where you have it all. We have a few more weeks, and so it's time to get busy. My hope is that with this added sense of urgency, we'll be able to get the votes we need on some of these things, and also you don't have to worry as much about some of these more vulnerable senators and Congress people because they don't have to worry about an election for another couple of years at least. So maybe you'll have more votes post-midterms than you had pre-midterms. Chuck Schumer is saying about this lame duck period, we are going to try to have as productive a lame duck session as possible. It's going to be heavy work, long hours to try and get something done. Let's hope he can deliver on this. I anticipate that he's going to run into many of the same issues that we've had over these past couple of years, which is that you can't always get everyone on the exact same page because you have slim majorities to work with in the House and Senate. Now, in these next few weeks, there's some must-dos in the agenda, some things that Democrats actually absolutely have to get done. Like, for example, they're going to need to pass legislation to keep the government open and funded in order to avoid a government shutdown. They also have to pass the National Defense Authorization Act. That has to get passed so that the military can get funded, and you better bet that we're going to be able to find the money to do that because that is always a top priority in Washington. There's also this back and forth about raising the debt limit from its current $31.4 trillion cap. Republicans may try to hold this hostage in exchange for some concessions on spending cuts. To be honest, the debt ceiling talk and the government shutdown talk, it doesn't interest me that much because these things happen like every couple of years, maybe even more frequently than that, and it's always the same discussion. We always know that they're going to do the right thing to keep the government open and so that we won't default on our debt and all these different things, but it's just this big charade that comes up. I'm more focused on the policy items that Democrats can get done in these next couple of weeks. Like, for one, they still have to codify interracial marriage and same-sex marriage. They had that preliminary vote on the topic, and 12 Republicans in the Senate crossed over and voted along with the Democrats, but they still need to pass this thing one more time in the Senate. Hopefully that's a shoo-in. My sense is that it is. In terms of other priorities, they have to pass some legislation to clarify the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which became a point of interest when Trump was trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Democrats want to clarify the vice president's role as purely ceremonial when they count the electoral votes. Of course, it was believed for many, many years to be ceremonial, but then Trump decided to torpedo democracy and argued that Pence was able to overturn the election in his favor. And so Democrats want to make the text very much clear on how you count electoral votes so that a vice president can't just turn things over so that they win. This is what Trump interpreted to be vindication, by the way, because he was trying to claim that the whole time Mike Pence had the authority to do this, and the fact that Democrats are changing the law now means that he was right that Pence could have done this, and it doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, they're trying to do that. They're also looking at getting more aid approved for Ukraine, especially with the expectation that Kevin McCarthy is not going to be amenable to approving more aid funding for Ukraine once the Republicans take over. There's contingents on the right, these non-interventionalist types, also these people who think that we shouldn't help Ukraine at all in their fight against the Russian invasion for one reason or another because they're okay with Putin's regime. They're not going to want to see aid going towards Ukraine, so that's another thing that Democrats can try to do, one last-ditch effort on that. They're also trying to get protections for dreamers with these final few weeks, undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as minors, even though they didn't make the decision on their own to come here. They still have to deal with, potential deportation, potentially going back to a country that they never knew because they weren't born here in the United States and aren't technically citizens. So that's another thing that Biden should try to do in these next few weeks. I think that personally, if you're going to go pedal to the metal on any of these issues, it should probably be the Dreamers because it's perhaps the most consequential. Like the same-sex marriage thing and interracial marriage bill, that'll probably get done pretty easily. I'm also assuming we're going to be able to keep the government funded and, raise the debt ceiling and all of those procedural types of things. But in terms of what you can actually do to make a material difference for the public and how you can sort of increase Democratic poll numbers and just do the most good with the time that you have left, I think that protecting the Dreamers should be a high priority. I wish that there could be more things on this list, but we've known since the start of this Congress, the start of this presidency, that we were not going to be able to get done all the progressive wish list items that we wanted to get accomplished done because we just were never going to have the votes. We weren't able to repeal the filibuster and all this stuff, but that doesn't mean that you can't grab all these low-hanging fruit. That's what we've been trying to do over these past couple of years, and hopefully with these final weeks, we'll be able to do more of it.